Introduction to Buddhism by Venerable Rungruang Papart Saro. About 2,500 years ago, the Buddha was born a prince in Nepal, and after he realized the pattern of life as birth, aging, sickness, and death, he found that the conventional ideology of God was not sufficient to answer his question on the meaning of life. So he began a journey in search of the true meaning of life for several years by performing several conventional practices involving hard effort, but it was unsuccessful. Finally, he discovered an insight observation technique by incorporating mindfulness into the investigation by insight observations, in accordance with the Four Mindfulness Foundations, and then applying the Four Noble Truths on the basis of arising mental phenomena to gain wisdom on the truths of life within nature. What made the Buddha so special apart from others was that the Buddha was the first one who applied a systematic pragmatic approach to study what a life is, without any supernatural power, and he discovered the truths of life within nature called an enlightenment. Although this ability for insight observations is individual, everyone who follows the Buddha's guidelines on the practice can earn wisdom and cleanse all defilements from their minds as well. This knowledge is not restricted to any specific person or religion. It is universal knowledge for all mankind. In Buddhism, all man-made problems are caused by troubled mind behavior involving mental errors called defilements. By letting the mind be dominated by greed, hatred, delusion and ignorance of the truths of nature, we eventually will wrongly respond to the world and end up suffering in life. Therefore, of utmost concern for everyone is how we can rid ourselves of any defilements that arise within the mind correctly, and this is exactly what the Buddha's teachings are all about. In Buddhism, the only way to resolve this serious problem is by learning the truths of life within nature, and then using this knowledge to cope with the world correctly so that we will be able to respond to the world rightly, including having rightful speech, rightful action, and to bring peace to the world with a rightful likelihood. The word Dharma in Buddhism means the truths of nature, and since the Buddha's teachings are about the truths of life within nature, therefore the term Dharma is also implied for the Buddha's teachings. Whether one is a Buddhist or not is not as important as that one study the truths of life within nature, and it is the main duty and responsibility of every Buddhist to understand the truths of life within nature, including contemplating what life really is, how life is functioning in receiving stimuli from the world, and then how we respond to the world correctly with empathy, kindness, sympathy, compassion, so that we bring peace to the world. In Buddhism, life is viewed as a dynamic evaluation system through the law of nature. Life is not being controlled by anyone as they might wish. What happens in life, including our feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, are caused by the law of nature, Dharma. In short, all phenomena in nature are no self. In recent research on the Human Connectome Project, scientists discovered that all the mental phenomena in the central nervous system, including feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, are the matters of process and state, which can be defined in terms of the structural connectome of brain pathway as described in Buddhism, pathways of consciousness, and the functional connectome of mental behaviors as described in Buddhism, mental factors. Therefore, there is indeed no any self who dictates or controls on how the mind will be at all. In fact, the self of being something is simply an assumption defined by people. The assumption and self-conviction of having a life being something as a self appears to be useful in the context of saving a life from natural disasters, but it is the aggravation of having greed, hatred, and increasing delusion to the self down the drain that begins to cause problems in life. An analogy of self as a delusion in Buddhism is similar to the general theory of gravity in modern physics that holds the notion of gravity as not a force, In fact, there is no gravitational field. Both the gravitational force and the gravitational field are just an assumption trying to explain gravitational phenomena. Therefore, the gravity field is a kind of an assumption. There is no gravity force, but a space-time curvature. Likewise, a self, although we each individually may experience a being as phenomenon, for instance, a feeling as a phenomenon, but an assumed self, who feels either happy or sad, is indeed an assumption. In this case, the feeling phenomenon is caused by certain dependent origination in nature. Similarly, the rain is a natural phenomenon, but the god of rain is an assumption, while the sun is an object of mass and energy in nature, but the god of sun is indeed an assumption as well. What so-called God or demon is nothing but an assumption to be excused for the real problem of what is happening inside the mind. The Buddha explained that all mankind's problems are fundamentally caused by misunderstanding what the real truths of life are, and since human beings tend to be corruptible, mistakenly assuming a notion of self-supremacy during the cause of mind processing, they may contaminate the mind with defilements of greediness, hatred, and delusion in life as follows. Greediness, hatred, and delusion of every kind are unwholesome. Whatever action a greedy, hating, and deluded person heaps up by deeds, words, or thoughts, that too is unwholesome. Whatever suffering such a person, overpowered by greediness, hatred, and delusion, his thoughts controlled by them, inflicts under false pretexts upon another by killing, imprisonment, confiscation of property, false accusations, or expulsion being prompted in this by the thought, all this is unwholesome. In Buddhism, the goal of life is to purify the mind by cleansing all defilements arising during the mind processing with wisdom. This is a very logical concept because all problems in the world are caused by humans, so the only way to solve all the man-made problems in the world, including environmental pollution, climate change, mental illness, hatred and brutality, racism, corruption, poverty, economic crisis, social unrest, chaos and war, is simply fixing on the troublesome mind first. Therefore, theoretically, by having the wisdom of the truths of nature, then using this knowledge to correct the troubling mind from defilements and mental disorders, we can all collectively resolve all our problems together. And in this way, Buddhism can bring peace to the world. Being a Buddhist or not is not as important as to study the truths of life within nature, and it is the main duty and responsibility of every Buddhist to understand the truths of life within nature, including contemplating of what really the life is, how the life is functioning in receiving stimulus from the world, and then how we will respond back to the world correctly with empathy, kindness, sympathy, compassions, and to bring peace to the world. You may wonder, if there is no God to decide what is good or bad, then how we can be wholesomeness, and this leads to new way of looking on what a good life should be. In Buddhism, the definitions of absolute goodness, and purified merit, and wholesomeness are not just doing something following some pre-specified instructions by someone as a god of absolute goodness. In Buddhism, absolute goodness is referred to having the right understanding of the world, and then responding to the world by taking actions in the world based on facts and science of nature. In contrast, badness is defined as having the wrong understanding of the world and then taking wrong actions against the laws of nature, causing conflicts and troubling problems. In short, facts and science are a foundation for goodness, while misunderstanding the truths of life within nature is the origination of badness. The only way to resolve problems in the world is to study the truths of nature correctly, and then taking proper actions based on facts and science. In this way, we all together can live peacefully with nature. On the contrary, if we do wrong actions against nature, then nature makes necessary rebalancing adjustments, and consequently troubling problems occur in the world. This is exemplified by the climate change problem that we are now experiencing. In Buddhism, morality is a set of guidelines for people living together with other people, and it is a basis for further studying the mind to develop an individual wisdom to be able to cleanse all mental errors within the mind. Therefore, an insight wisdom is considered as a highest quality of merit in life. It is very important for everyone to study the truths of life within nature correctly so that we can take right action in the world as an absolute good for all beings. An insight wisdom is a kind of knowledge that we should develop during the Buddhist practice of insight observation, seeing the mind processing and to gain wisdom on the truths of life within nature, and then by using this wisdom to eliminate all the contaminated defilements of individual residuals, called latent dispositions, and by doing so then collapsing of the flow of the process of dependent origination within the mind. These latent dispositions are the sorts of the information of individuality which reflect in individual behaviors by karma. In Buddhism, everything and every phenomenon happening is caused by the nature of karma, and the only way to break the troubling karma is by studying to gain wisdom of the truths of life within nature, and then turning around the pattern of mind processing to be in line with the Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha explained that contamination within the mind processing occurs when the mind is mixed up with individual residuals of latent dispositions. This malfunction of mind will cause an error that instantly contaminates the mind processing. This contamination is typically a mental error of defilement, and once the mind is contaminated, then no matter how the mind will resume the processing, the defilement will be increasingly aggravated from a subtle defilement to be a middle defilement, and ultimately to be a strong defilement. The mind then will instruct the body to take an action associated with the strong defilement. It is apparently that what a particular action is taken, whether good or bad, explicitly depending on the mind processing, in fact not by any self. Therefore, in Buddhism, having wisdom on the truths of nature or not is a crucial condition in determining any decision of action to be good or bad. In Buddhism, neither a god, or a demon, or any supernatural figures have anything to do with the goodness or badness of a human being. The matter of wholesomeness or unwholesomeness depends entirely on whether an individual person's actions, the speech, and mind are right or not. That is, if the mind has wisdom of the truths of life within nature, then the person will relate to the world and respond to the world correctly. On the other hand, a mind without wisdom will respond to the world incorrectly. And the opposition of the wisdom of the truths of life within nature against the ignorance to the truths of life within nature is considered as the most serious unwholesomeness, and in fact it is the root cause of all kinds of problems for mankind. This concept of rightfulness makes Buddhism a unique religion that it is based on facts and science. In Buddhism, studying the truths of life within nature is the primary concern. There is no need to be in or out of favor with the beliefs in gods, angels, ghosts, or demons, because all such beings are merely considered as parts of nature. And, in a broader sense, either a heaven or a hell is just a particular state of mind experiencing either happiness or suffering. Life after death also is just a certain condition of life in nature which may occupy various formations with either form or formlessness. A noble wise person will have a purified mind with no defilements when alive, and after death the mind still is deliberated as well. In Buddhism, life is no self, and there is only a transition of information of individuality karma, as part of a natural process. Birth and death are simply points of transition of individuality from an ending of one formation to a beginning of another new formation in a cycle of life. The Buddha explained that we should neither simply believe in self, nor disbelieve in self by just saying so, but we have to experience the reality through introspective observations of mental phenomena, and realizing how the mind is processing. This insight experiencing is much more important than having beliefs and faith. The enlightenment of Buddha is the discovery of the truths of life within nature with a special practice to completely purify the mind, by maintaining mindfulness while constantly aware of the mind processing and eliminating the emerging defilements of any kinds deepen into a subtle level in the inner mind. The enlightenment of Buddha is one of the greatest scientific events which have happened in the world in the sense that the Buddha gained a remarkable knowledge from his phenomenological observations based on a special technique called an insight observation, to observe the reality of life within nature by the use of mindfulness to explore into the mind through a stream of objects of consciousness, of which later on the Buddha developed a Buddhist practice from his experiences for introspective learning. And then using this knowledge to correct all mental errors called defilements within the mind based on the truths of life within nature. As a consequence, Buddhism is a pragmatic religion that is based on facts and science gained from insight observation on life within nature. After the Enlightenment, the Buddha began his teachings about the truths of life within nature. He also developed a systematic way of study for Buddhism using a strategy on morality study, mind study and wisdom development study, by which the learning process consists of studying, practicing, and evaluating, respectively. Anyone with sufficient training in self-examination can experience the truths of life, too. That is, when studying the Buddha's teachings, we have to understand and comprehend the words clearly. When practicing, we have to follow the Buddha's instructions straightforwardly and see the mental phenomena. When evaluating, we have to analyze and evaluate the practice results in accord with the Buddha's teachings correctly. The essence of this learning system can be simplified into a twofold method: the truths as the contents, and the practice as the processing to gain the wisdom. This knowledge of Buddha's learning system has been passed down for many generations for more than 2,000 years up to the present time, and this knowledge is kept in a form of religion called Buddhism. The original Buddhism is about learning the truths of life within nature, and then learning how to use this knowledge to understand the world correctly so that we can respond to the world rightly.